to start this with my eyes open. Last several. And good morning. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. I'm happy to say that I get to talk about Fresno schools. They are a big point of frustration, but at the same time, I think there's some hope, and we need to work through both of those things. We need to identify the problem and get to hope. But before we get there, I always start with my opportunities to get involved. That's usually meetings. Sometimes that's other events. For my regulars that make Constitutionalist for California meetings in Clovis, no meeting tonight. We have decided to do something else entirely. We're doing a Celebrate America event at the American Legion Hall in Fresno. That's post 509. It's at 3509 North 1st Street. There will be pizza and drinks. And what it's designed to do is connect with kids, to teach them about the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment. We skipped the third because it's about quartering soldiers. Voting, and a few other things. We've got 9 tables. Should be a lot of fun. We could use some more kids. They would love it if you RSVP'd, but I think we mostly just need more kids. The phone number is 559-797-0952. That's 559-797-0952. That is tonight from 6:30 to 8 p.m. and should be a fun event. It's our trial run, so we'll probably have a few hiccups, but it's a chance to learn how to run an event like this. And I think a lot of our people need some practice in learning how to connect with kids. So I think it'll be a positive thing. Next event. Sunday, there's a Medical Freedom Rally in Fresno. That is July 31st from 2 to 4 at Blackstone and Nice. And then August 2nd, the Kingsburg chapter of Constitutionalists for California is having a meeting at 6:30 p.m. at 15,000 Rose Avenue, and the speaker is the new DA, I'm happy to say, new DA for Kings County, Sarah Hacker. I think Kings County got lucky. I think that it's a very great thing that Keith Fagundes isn't there anymore. Having met and talked and interviewed both of them. With that being said, gentlemen, who's going first? All right, Mr. Slatic, you are up.
Good day, sir.
Good day.
Okay, we have some school board races that are going to be contested, some seats that will be contested in this November election cycle. And we are honored and blessed to have one of those folks that is looking to get on the school board here, my friend Wayne Horton, who will be running for what is called the District 1, a.k.a. the Edison region, and looking to get on the board and bring some actual sanity, and let's actually educate kids back to public education in Fresno.
Who is it that he's running against?
He's running against a lady called Keisha Thomas, who's been on the board for 3.5 years.
3.5 years. Wow. So, Wayne, why are you doing this?
So I'm concerned about our children's education. The curriculum that they're trying to bring to our schools now is unacceptable. Curriculum that I hope to bring to our school system, kind of curriculum that our founding fathers put in place for our schools. So my concern is children learn the highest education that they can through the proper curriculum, and not this curriculum they have in schools now.
Well, they're not really focusing on education. They're focusing on being woke.
True, and it focuses on indoctrination. Mm-hmm. And this has got to stop.
Absolutely.
So I've seen my kids were in school. My son, if I hadn't gotten involved in his education, he would have not graduated. Because another thing is that parent involvement is extremely important in our school system. We don't see enough of that.
Right. And moms are typically there for kids, and dads are not there quite as often as they should be. So thank you for stepping up, and I bet your son wasn't too happy at the time, but I bet he is now.
Yes, he is.
So what is your background?
My background is I joined the Army at age 19, made the rank of sergeant in just over 2 years. I was an instructor there in my unit, and left the military. Worked odd end jobs until I got on with the state of California Corrections. Retired there 10 years ago. Had a great career, and now I'm enjoying retirement.
Well, it says something that you're willing to step out of retirement. But with that background, I'm taking it you're kind of a no-nonsense kind of guy?
Exactly. Because our prison system is full of young men. I've talked to many of them throughout my career of 24 years in corrections who can't read past the second grade level. I've seen it firsthand. And this is disturbing because I know that in the schools, there are a lot of kids that are graduating in Fresno Unified School District who can't read past second grade level. And this is a travesty.
Can we get some stats on that? Kind of how many are graduating that are at an elementary level? Because I know it's hard to define whether it's second grade or fourth grade or sixth grade. It doesn't matter. If it's elementary school level that they're graduating high school, it's a big problem. But can one of you give me some stats on that?
I mean, the data is, they keep it fluffy intentionally, because that way you can't say that 40% of each graduating class is at the sixth grade level and 20% is at the fifth grade level. They keep it fluffy. They'll keep it under eighth grade or over ninth grade. They keep it in a range versus something like that. It is intentionally done to obfuscate.
Even though the stats are there, I'm sure.
They're there, but if you're not a full-time person pulling apart the layers of the onion to do this, and I'll give you an example. It came up in a meeting yesterday, is when I got on the board, you'd see all these things expressed in the context of, well, our kids all have C averages. But then you find out that they use the definition of a C average is down to a 1.5. Well, when you and I were in school, and Wayne was in school, 1.5 was a doggone D. Now it's 1.49 and below is a D. Now at 1.5 is still a C. But again, if you let them obfuscate data, it's like they'll portray data in such a fashion like, what does that mean? But I'm the first person on this board in history to go, no. Explain to me the source document. For instance, I brought up on a previous discussion with you, Eric and Wayne, that we're the only school district that in this area that has kids getting diplomas with 1.0 GPAs. So I
thought it had to be a 1.1. Come on now.
Technically, it is 1.1, but it could be 1.0, but it's statistically impossible to get a actual 1.0. There's kids down to 1.02.
Okay,
but it could be a 1.0, but you can't maneuver the classes to get an actual 1.0 in some fashion. So there's 1.02s.
So a 1 is an F in your graduating high school. Is that correct?
Well, not in this way of quantifying things.
I forgot what shell game we're playing.
Correct. It's a Ponzi scheme. But the point I want to make is that I go, okay, when did this change from a 2.0 to graduate to a 1.0? And we keep pulling back, because I'm known as source document Slatic. They can't find a source document that says this board or this superintendent on this date signed a piece of paper that said, now do this down to 1.0. Which means if you can't find the smoking gun, somebody did it in a smoke-filled room behind a curtain in the dark at night just to make the statistics look good. It was a book cooking.
Well, if you have good graduation rates and you're the superintendent, isn't your job safer?
It's exactly what, okay, until proven otherwise, that's the thesis. Okay, and that's what this is. This is job security for previous administrations. Now, this predated me on the board and this current superintendent by certainly a decade, if not more. But the fact that there's this major policy change and there's no historical record of who made that decision, if you don't go, you got to be kidding me, as I do on this. You're not.
Well, it would have to either be Powell or Hansen, because that's right about that time is when it shifted from
correct
a not terrible school to an embarrassment in our nation, bottom 5% in our nation.
Correct. And knowing the Hansen, I wouldn't know Hansen if he walked in the door and punched me right now. I've never met the guy. But having looked at so many artifacts of what he did when he was here for those, 16 years or something like that, this is consistent with that. He's the one who introduced the, quote, credit recovery program, which means I'm going to have a kid who just failed a bunch of classes, hammer out keys for a week, and their credits magically recover, and they suddenly passed the classes and learned all the stuff they didn't get in 2 semesters. That is happening. I met with a teacher yesterday from one of our continuation schools, a fantastic man who you'll meet soon, who has literally uncovered the smoking gun of cheating, where they're handing kids the answers to the tests on the credit recovery computer. They're on their phone and they simply enter them. So something in the next month is going to come out on this, and it's going to turn into hopefully the nuclear Armageddon for that program.
So Wayne, when you found out about the frankly embarrassing state of Fresno Unified, what happened? Aside from I imagine there was steam coming out of your ears.
Yes, it was. And when I found out through, my own children, my son, youngest son, and my oldest grandson, what they were going through, I said, wait a minute, something's wrong here. It's not, teachers are failing these kids that are not learning. I mean, how are you going to let certainly my oldest grandson, I got a call from his mom. He's going to get a 1.7 grade point average. He's a sophomore at the time. So she asked me to get involved. So I got involved as a grandfather, went down to the school, had a meeting with all his teachers and the vice principal, got it straightened out. Talked to my grandson. We had a 5-minute discussion. By the time he graduated, he had a 3.2.
Okay, not perfect, but that's a big, in that short amount of time, that's...
Yes, because parental involvement, whether it's a father or grandfather, somebody has to get involved with these children, let them know, look, we care about you, we love you, you can do better than this. And the problem with a lot of teachers is they don't show enough care toward these kids, identify the problem children in their classroom and help them out to do better.
I think that's part of the problem, but I think the teachers are being managed by people that don't care about educating the kids. I think there's a lot of good teachers that do.
There is, and there are some that don't. And
I know, but I think the majority of teachers got in because they cared.
You're right, the majority do.
The pencil pushers that moved away from the kids, I think, are the bigger problem.
They're a big problem, and so was the teachers union.
Mm-hmm.
They're a huge problem, especially the NEA. They're the largest school union out there.
Wait, they're a school union? I thought they were a communist organization.
Well, they call themselves a union, but okay, we'll go there. But and so when I found out about them and how they got involved with the schools, it's going back to the 1970s, that far back. And when the Department of Education was founded, because of the NEA by at that time President Carter, so now we have a national Department of Education government. Why?
Because they wanted control.
Exactly.
And that control seems to be all focused on indoctrination.
True. And this is the biggest problem I have in our school system. Enough of this indoctrination. And let's get back to basics. Reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Well, I've been to a lot of school board meetings. I'm relatively new to this fight, but I've been to, over the last 2.5 years, I've been to a whole lot of Fresno Unified School Board meetings. Never once have they ever addressed the fact that COVID was an utter disaster. Closing the schools was an utter disaster.
True.
They were an utter disaster before then, and they have no plan for fixing the fact that they can't do basics, math, reading.
Exactly. The basics is the foundation.
So where do we start then? Because it's going to be, without parent involvement, changing what's happening with the sophomore is going to be tough. But changing what's happening with the kindergartner, first, second, third grade, I think is an easier route. And I don't want to write those older kids off, but you got to get your wins where you can. So what do you guys do?
I look at it this way, playing off of what Wayne says, the basics, reading, writing, and math. So I love to say, because it's completely accurate, that 10 years ago, Fresno Unified employed 6 social workers. Today we employ 86 social workers. Now, that's, in my opinion, now being on the inside and all the things I get to see and hear, it's because we are so bad that little Johnny and little Susie need all these social emotional supports because they can't read, write, or do math. And my thesis is if they could actually read, write, and do math at somewhere near grade level, we wouldn't need all these social workers. Again, we employ more social workers than any place north of LA in the state of California. Again, we need some. We need a 100,000% increase in a 10-year period if we were actually reading, writing, and doing math at grade level. And that goes to, segues into this. We spend, $40 million a year on what's called social emotional supports. And what I found is when I ask for, and they can't give me, what do we get for that? Well, we have all these hours of counseling and tutoring and mentoring. Right. But what does it do for reading, writing, and math? What do you mean, what does it do for reading, writing? It's fluffy. Kids feel better about themselves. So there's no, quote, return on investment for these things. I've asked the question, out of the hundreds of kids that we've expelled, and expulsion is really this massive misnomer. In the old days, you went home. Now, if you're expelled, the next Monday, you're in another school. That's it, because we don't want to lose the money.
And that could be for pretty severe things like having a knife.
It could be for knifing someone. Now, if you knife someone, hit a vital organ, you're in juvie. Okay, other than that, you're in another school. Okay, so I asked, so every one of these hundreds and hundreds of expulsions, they will also receive anger management counseling. Hundreds of them, but you see a kid with an extremely unique last name, and I'll see this kid getting expelled every year. It's a unique last name. And I look at his permanent record, I'm like, no, we expelled him last year, and here's another kid. And he also got anger. So does this anger management stuff actually work? So I asked for the, quote, recidivism on anger management. Well, we don't have that data. What do you mean we don't have that data? Well, no one's ever asked for us to track recidivism on anger management counseling. Are they going to do it again?
Well, but why would the school district want any way to be accountable for their actions?
Correct. And so,
because I see it as a shell game. They're just hiding what's going on.
And if you, in fact, were spending the money on reading, writing, and math, we would know the grades are going up. The aptitude is going up. But instead, we flow it into all these kumbaya, fluffy unicorn and cloud programs that there's no accountability or return on investment, or you can't track recidivism on anger management counseling. That's why we've gone to that and away from the excellence on the basics, because you can't track the return on investment or the progress on anger management.
Well, on a personal level, you told a story about your grandson and your son. And I think the most important thing, Wayne, was that you talked about accountability.
Yes, accountability.
How do you bring accountability to the school district?
Well, if the teacher is there and he or she is teaching the classroom, and that child, let's say 20% of the children not learning in that classroom, then we got a problem. The teacher must be held accountable. But they have this, they're vested at so many years in the schools, and it's hard to get rid of a teacher these days. Unless
it's almost easier to let them, like they do in New York, sit in an office and do nothing rather than be exposed to the kids, because it's cheaper than to actually go through the process of firing them.
And Los Angeles.
And then, is it that bad here?
In Los Angeles as well, they do that.
Okay.
And then, the children, you have to get their attention. No, it's not hard. When you're teaching a child, you got to get their attention. Once you got their attention, then you can teach them. If the child is acting up in class while the teacher is teaching the class, then that's a problem. I walked in the classrooms when my kids were going to school. When they saw me walk in that classroom, you could hear a pin drop. But my children know that this father didn't play.
But you kind of have a walk and a look, sir.
Well, thank you. But, we had a thing called, when I was in corrections, called command presence.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's a certain way you look, you stand. It's called command presence. So,
well, you deserve their respect.
Right. I don't ask for it. I demand it.
Right.
So when I'm walking to a classroom, I see a child acting up. I don't have any problems waving that child over to me and adjusting his behavior outside the classroom one-on-one.
Can parents still go on campus? Can this happen still? Because getting parents involved in this way would be huge.
Well, they shut that bad boy down with COVID. So is it going to be back to, I expect it will be back this fall when we start school in a couple of weeks at the elementary school level. It is easy, and it should be easy for any parent to get on the elementary school level and observe school. It is less difficult, it is harder when they're moving around class to class in middle school and high school.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. So we're still on social media. And when we come back, which we will in just a minute, let's just try to identify what are the biggest single problems for the school district. So think about what are the biggest things that speak to you. Let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Today we are speaking about Fresno Unified, one of the school districts that is in the bottom of the nation. We're better than Detroit. We're pretty close to Cincinnati, but I think they're technically better. Oh wait, I've finished my whole list of who we're better than. Shouldn't we be embarrassed? Shouldn't we demand better? So what are the biggest problems at Fresno Unified?
Who wants to start on that one?
That could be 3 more hours. But we're going to have to try to condense it down to.
We used to call that in Afghanistan, Eric, a target-rich environment.
It's worse than that. It's all in a barrel.
Where shall we start? Again, in no particular order. I look at one of the things that makes me just lose my mind for these 4 years I've been on the board. There's no sense of urgency. Okay, whether we get Johnny educated or Susie educated a little bit better now, or in 5 years, or in 10 years, or it's their siblings in 5 years or 10 years, or their kids in 20 years, no one cares. Okay, no one cares about a sense of urgency. Programs we fail continually, and we'll segue from sense of urgency to accountability. We fail constantly because they throw crap against the wall, because if there's one saving grace of Fresno Unified, there's plenty of money. Billions. That's with a B, like in boy, billions.
Bigger than the budget of Fresno, the city of Fresno.
Far bigger than
like
the city
double.
of Fresno. Not quite anymore, but now 30% bigger.
Okay.
Because they got a ton of money from COVID relief.
Okay, so now it's backed off a little bit, but it's still bigger.
Well, we're at 2.2 and they're at 1.7, and that would be billion.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of money to do all these things. But we have no sense of urgency, and we keep throwing money at stuff, and if it doesn't work, I'll use a great example. I was in a meeting the other day about CTE, continuing college CTE, technical education, and we have a warehousing program, learn warehouse management. I think that's a fantastic trade to learn. And I asked the guy who was running it, do we have radio frequency ID chips as part of the curriculum? And I know some guys that run warehouses, and every pallet of stuff, and sometimes boxes, I guarantee you Amazon does this in their warehouses. There's a doggone chip when it goes from this room to that room. We now know where that box is.
Well, because it deals with the huge theft problem that
amongst other things, but also efficiencies.
Yeah.
And
so they can find something.
Here's the guy right now: efficiencies and as well as loss prevention. This guy who's in charge of this curriculum, what? And again, I didn't say RFID, it's radio frequency identification chips. He had no idea what I'm talking about. He said, we need to look into that. How can you set, again, and this is a fundamental of this. Another example, we are beginning this year, this is actually a pretty cool story, but we're screwing it up already, aviation mechanic program for the technical education program. Learn how to work on plane engines. I like it. Get kids engaged with something. Mm-hmm. And to that end, we have bought a hangar at the Chandler Airport. And we're going to be doing stuff there. We're going to put some classrooms in it. It's a great idea. And we're also, in the next couple of years, going to be developing flight training. Because there's a huge opening in the next 10 years for people with pilot's licenses as professions. Let's get little Johnny halfway of his hours he needs for a pilot's license by the time we get him a diploma. I love this idea. Get them engaged. Keep them engaged with something that keeps their passion. And I said to the guy, I've been on a lot of flight lines. I'm not a pilot. I'm not an aviation guy, but I've been on a lot of flight lines in Iraq and Afghanistan and military bases. And I said, I look at aviation in the military, certainly there's a three-legged stool. There's the maintenance side, and then there's the pilot side, but then there's the ops side, which includes the air traffic controller. So why are we not putting a mock-up air traffic control center on the top of that hangar that we just bought? Because we're building classrooms there. and it's looking down on the runway, and I guarantee you that the military air control guys from the Air Guard, the 144th, and Lemoore Naval Air Station, they would love to support that to help young kids coming out of high school become military air traffic controllers.
Well, it sounds like the leadership doesn't have a plan. Or maybe it's just that the leadership on the school board is focused on, what was it, equity, and people of color?
You forgot
and
inclusion.
People of color.
You forgot inclusion and diversity.
Yeah. And anybody that is, and it shouldn't matter what their color is, anybody that is struggling should get extra help. Period. And if we actually go for equity, then rather than equality of opportunity, then we have to actually have a huge authoritarian control to make that truly happen. And we also never reward excellence.
Never.
So I'm not quite sure where to go with that. So you identified lack of accountability.
And lack of sense of urgency.
Lack of sense of urgency. And you gave stories about poor planning. Anything else you can identify?
Well, I've been to a few school boards, several of them, and what I've seen is this. Changing the name of a school in Fresno to another name from its existing name, does that improve our children's education?
Yeah, I didn't care that they did it. I just thought,
But
why did we have this S show about this? It shouldn't have been a big deal. They should have had a planning committee, and instead they jumped in and had this huge, ridiculous fight. Should there be probably several schools named after Armenians? I'm sure there should be, but it was a ridiculous waste of time fight.
Exactly. And then changing the name of mascots in the schools. Okay, you spend time on that. What about our child education?
So for you, it's priorities.
Priorities. Let's just focus on the children's education and let everything else take care of itself that doesn't involve their education. We don't have discipline in the schools like we should. When I was going to school, with a lot of discipline. Oh yeah, you did not get out of line with a teacher back then like they do now. I've been in classrooms. My granddaughter, first grade class, student acting up, wouldn't sit down, wouldn't be still. Because the power to discipline these children had been taken away from the teachers.
Not just that, but a lot of teachers don't have a command presence at all.
True, but if you give them the authority to discipline that child properly, I'm not saying no kind of abuse, but to discipline this child, he's not going to act up.
Well, if you can stab somebody, and as long as it's not a vital organ and you're just going to school at a different school, we definitely have a culture of unaccountability.
True.
During COVID, something new happened. They decided that the graduation requirements changed. You want to talk about that one, or are we going to just let that one go?
It's so egregious, and the story's got legs. It's going to keep on going. The Bee is going to run something on it this week. KMJ did something the other day. Fox 26 is waiting for Nelson to give an interview on it. He was out for a few days, so he has not done it. And so it's going to be running on local media. This story has legs. That the three aspects of AB 104, the one I think you're alluding to most is
Absolutely.
If little Johnny or little Susie are 100 credits short of graduation, they can just say, give me my diploma. I am out of here. We offer them an AB 104. The state legislature passed this. Context. You in high school, you need 230 credits to get a diploma.
So 40% of your credits are now waived to get a diploma?
Correct.
Roughly?
And so you could be essentially down as the 10th grade level, but you're in 11th or 12th grade. And the Assembly Bill 104 says you will go to those kids and you'll offer them a 5th year of high school. You'll offer them summer school. You'll offer them this sit in front of a computer and recover the credits. Or you'll say, sign here, we'll waive the credits, here's your diploma.
But you already play all these other games about giving them grades. And now you've eliminated 100 credits, or 40% of what it means to get a high school diploma. Does it mean anything anymore?
And Eric, the numbers tell the story even better in that how many kids were offered this credit waiver program under AB 104? 1,005.
Over a 2-year period.
Over a 2-year period. 324 1 year and the rest the second year. And I go, wait a minute. So 1,000 kids were offered this, and 0 took the 5th year of high school, 0 took the summer school, 0 took the sit in front of the computer and quote unquote learn something, which is really not learning, but they ostensibly could be. And 100% of these kids said, just give me my damn diploma. This is so offensive to me. Now, these kids were so far over the line in terms of they were not salvageable.
They didn't have real grades anyway.
They didn't have any. They were just simply taking up space in a thing. But it goes to these kids that we've completely failed in their first 11 or 12 years of school with us. That's 1,000 kids that now, and all these kids have 1.2 GPAs. All these kids read, write, and do math at the 4th or 5th grade level. And now they have a diploma, and they're wandering around the streets of Fresno wondering why they can't get a job.
My understanding is that Margaret Mims did aptitude tests on prisoners for years.
For 16 years in office. Grade level reading.
Yes, she did.
You want to tell that story?
Well, I don't know much about the story, but I do know that Margaret Mims believes in education and giving these people the aptitude test. But like I was saying earlier about our prisons being full of these young men that cannot read past the 2nd grade level, that's very concerning.
Even if it's 4th grade. At 4th grade, how do you fill out a job application? So, a huge percentage of those people that were in prison had a 4th grade reading level. And you have to assume, because it was the Fresno jail, that the majority of those people came from Fresno Unified, because it cranks out more students than the rest of the county.
True. But in our school system today, they're going backwards instead of going forward with our education, because a lot of curriculum that were in place and a lot of principles that were in place in our schools are gone. They've been removed systematically. And that's been going on for 100 years. The progressive school system started in the 1920s, and it's accelerated more so today. So they call it the dumb down of our children in education. And it's being done on purpose.
Well, because dumb people are easier to control.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean they're actually dumb. It means they're uneducated. There's a fine distinction.
True.
A couple of the smartest people I've ever met didn't graduate high school.
Right. Now, our founding fathers said this: our nation depends on a well-educated populace. And that's true. When you're well-educated, you make right decisions in everything, in every aspect of your life, whether it's voting, whether it's a job, whether it's investments, when you're well-educated.
I don't know that you always make those choices, but you at least understand the possibilities.
Yes.
Because man is flawed.
True. Well, that's true. Well, man has a sinful nature, so.
No.
But when you're well-educated, you make a lot of decisions that's going to benefit you in life. So, no matter what it is. So, but unfortunately, these principles and these curriculum, the education that's going on in our schools, not teaching these basic things. You got to keep things basic in order to go to the more
you have to have
complex.
Right. You have to have a foundation, fundamentals, before you can move on.
Exactly. And without that, you can't move on to a better education with our children. And that's my biggest concern in these school districts, because I've seen it myself firsthand. And it's disturbing. It really is. And this has got to stop.
Absolutely. Well, I'm happy to see that you're stepping up and other people are stepping up. How many are running in this current election? How many potential seats could you flip?
Well, I'm up for re-election, and that's a whole nother
show. So that's not a flip.
And that's a whole nother show in itself, if you ever wanted to just do that show.
We may. I'm not a fan of Susan Winthrop.
Well, you've met her. And
I've met her. And
you get to judge.
I think she's weak. She doesn't come to school board meetings. People that were considering supporting her. Somebody that's a trustee that was with the district for 35 years as a school psychologist. By the way, huge red flag, one of the most liberal positions in the school district. doesn't bother to come to school board meetings. And when I met her, she was all well talking about how she's going to get along with this hardcore woke leftist board. She wasn't acknowledging the real problems that are there. Enough time on my soapbox.
So there are 3 other school board seats that are up for re-election in this cycle. That would be Wayne for the Sunnyside seat, then the McLean region seat, and the Wayne for the Edison seat, then the Sunnyside seat, and the McLean seat. So 4 of the 7. So think of a world, listeners, and Eric and Wayne, where those 3 seats, when I get reelected, and we have a new bunch of sane people on the board who say enough, or to quote the famous movie line, I'm damn sick and tired of it, I'm not going to take it anymore. Speaking for our constituents and the citizens of Fresno, we get back to the basics, reading, writing, and math. Okay, the fluffy stuff, we can do once you read, write, and do math. Okay, but now the fluffy stuff has taken the priority away from reading, writing, and math, and all anyone wants to talk about is social, emotional, and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Once in a while, they'll talk about spending crazy money, millions of dollars, on new facilities.
True.
Correct.
You'll hear that in a school board too.
Because we have the money. But when was the last time, this is rhetorical, you know the answer, when was the last time there was ever an agenda item saying, let's discuss why we're a bottom 5% national school district and what we're going to do to fix it?
4 different times I've gone before that board and made essentially that point. And then the next meeting, nothing happens. And the next meeting, nothing happens because they don't want to discuss that. They're like no evil monkeys. One of my favorite speeches before them was calling them no evil monkeys.
Right.
See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. There's no problem. But we'll just pretend.
It's the leftist agenda. We want accountability in academic performance. They want a socialist agenda. That's it. It's all diversity, equity, inclusion, and social emotional. That's all they want because you can't quantify that. We can do it. You'll never know. You've read a number of board agendas, okay? And every one or every other one, and I've been to 91 board meetings now. The only trustee, I love to point this out and throw it in Eastless's face, I'm the only trustee to never miss a board meeting in my 4 years.
I remember the argument she had with you and then conceded later.
Absolutely. Because she will never be wrong, even though she's wrong. I'm the only one. So I read all the, and plus I actually do this job 50 hours a week. I read this stuff meticulously. I catch this district lying about stuff all the time. And when you read all this stuff, you notice, again, they bury it and you have to literally dissect to find it. But in every other agenda or so, you'll find on a agenda item, changing of sections of board policies or district policies. And you start reading, well, what are the actual changes? And you got to go to your source document, you flip back in the pages, and you go, half of this stuff consists of changing in our board policies or district policies, changing the word equality to the word equity. And you sit there and go, and it's insidious. It is simply being done like a cancer that is growing, that every couple weeks, every couple meetings, let's change another 2 or 3 paragraphs. The word equality is gone, and it's all now equity. And therefore, over time, it just becomes, hey, equal outcome.
Well, but if, in order to have a successful society, there is a hierarchy. Now, I don't believe that hierarchy should have anything to do with race. Because I believe in, a meritocracy. One of the greatest thinkers of our time is Thomas Sowell. I don't see there really being any argument. Even the left concedes that the man is brilliant. How did that happen? Or
Ben Carson.
Yeah.
Brilliant, man. I read a few of his books. He's brilliant.
So kind of my point is, with that hierarchy, somebody's going to be better at things. And the example I like to use is anybody that has more than one kid, those kids have different gifts. You might love them equally, so equality in that respect, but you want them to be able to harness those gifts. And if all we do is equity, how do we ever have excellence?
This all started, Eric, 20, 30 years ago with the everyone gets a trophy mentality. You show up for your kid's soccer game when my kids were tiny.
I can tell that happened at Wayne's household.
Yes, and it
You
happened.
probably started that locally, didn't you?
And it happened in my household, absolutely. But if you showed up for I remember when my little boys were in fourth grade. My boys were a year apart, so fourth and fifth grade. And they're running cross country in elementary school because they participated in every single sport there was. And my boys are built like me. They're not cross country runners, so they're not finishing in the top 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But they still got a doggone ribbon. And I'm like, oh, what the heck is this? They finished 47th out of 50, but they still got a ribbon. I'm like, oh my God, they are enculturating the everyone must get a trophy mentality. And I've seen it in the last 20 years since then.
Well, then that means you're entitled. Just because you showed up, you're entitled.
It's the insidiousness. It was just crept in. And well, I'm used to. What do you mean I don't get a ribbon for showing up?
We're going to go ahead and take our last break. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. When we come back, we're going to focus on hope and solutions. What can we do to fix this? That is the biggest thing. Part of it is getting new people elected. Part of it is having a plan once you're there and what your priorities are. How can you create a culture of accountability? Let's go ahead and come back. This is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXEX, the best talk in town. Today we are talking about a burning dumpster fire. That dumpster fire I'm referring to is Fresno Unified School District, bottom in the nation. I have before me two gentlemen that are engaging on a plan and have hope to fix it. Who's going first, and what do we do to fix this?
I'll start first because I've been thinking about this 50 hours a week or more for 4 years. And obviously we need to get some votes on the board of people who want to save it versus just simply insidiously make it social, emotional learning and equity and diversity and inclusion. So let's get to that. And that means we have Wayne and we have the gentleman running for the Sunnyside seat and the lady running for the McLean seat win their board seats in November. And I believe that will happen. But then, as you clearly said, then what? Okay, I've explained to my good friend Wayne, what do we do then to change this culture and go from a bottom 5% national district to a 50 percentile, middle of the bell-shaped curve, which isn't perfect, but boy, is it better than this. And we've got the perfect plan to do it once we have sane people on that board who will support it. It includes a bunch of things to get rid of the culture of nepotism that we have here. We have thousands of people who work here who are all related to the top 28 people in the district. And therefore, no one will touch them because they have a big cousin or aunt or an uncle who makes sure no one will take care of them. And they can do incredibly stupid and crazy and ruinous things. Yet there's never any thing other than, yes, if you have sex with a kid, you're going to jail. No one can protect you from that.
But everything short of that.
Everything short of that, you steal money, you steal stuff, you don't show up. I mean, we had a lady who was very connected to people, didn't show up for work for 2 months. Didn't call. And still, it took like 3 months before they could finally fire her because she was massively connected.
Now, was that a teacher or was that
an administrator?
Okay.
An administrator making $100,000.
Now, that's a huge deal because, see, the teachers union protects their own.
Correct.
You understand that it's a huge undertaking to actually fire a teacher.
3 years of documentation.
Yeah. But it still took 3 months to get rid of an administrator.
The administrator, it should have been 3 weeks after they didn't call in and say, I'm not coming back. I mean, 3 weeks of no contact. And, okay, I guess you got to figure out they're alive or dead. And that was finally figured out that she was alive. Just stop showing up. And we paid her. I mean, this is a broken place. So there is a plan, but it starts with, let's get these folks elected. And I hate to be the mercenary in the group, but I would love to know that you, Eric, on your site are going to post some, if you would love to contribute to this effort, here's the link and do that.
I send me something and I will post it in the show notes.
Absolutely. And
I have other places I can post that.
And, because to make this come off, it's going to cost a few bucks. And, give us $25, $65. Every little bit will get us a little bit closer to the line.
Mm-hmm. So, Wayne, what are hopes? Why are you hopeful, and what are your solutions to this?
Well, my hope is to bring our school system back to what it was when it was founded by our founding fathers. Our school system was the greatest school system in the world, envy of the world. And now, not so. We're going to bring back the basics. We're going to bring back discipline to our schools. We're going to have to start showing these kids, hey, we care about you. I believe a lot of kids out there a lot of them that are coming from these single parent households, not all of them, but some of them are a problem in our school systems. And we have a problem with the father not being in the home.
Typically, who is the disciplinarian?
Yes, and I heard, I think Tupac said it. He said that the only person that can rein me in when I'm angry, when he was angry, was his father. He knew how to rein him in being a young man. And that's true. Fathers know how to rein their sons in when they're angry, calm them down. So you have a lot of angry young men in schools these days. And they don't pay attention. They don't want to learn because they feel that nobody really cares about them. And so we have too many single parent households out there, which is a problem when it comes to our school systems. No father in the home. So you don't have balance in the home in these single parent homes. So how do we fix that?
I don't know how we fix that, but I saw Larry Elder Tuesday night. He was in town. And interestingly enough, he said the greatest single threat isn't CRT. It's the fact that, and he specifically referenced African Americans, that 70% of the households don't have a father present. Now, I'm sure that it is maybe not that number, but much too high a number for every ethnic group.
Larry Elder was right, and I checked out the stats on it, and that's a big problem. But once again, you got to bring discipline back to the school systems. Proper discipline. Not this, okay, this child did this and did that, we're going to expose him. No. We want to deal with this child's attitude. Adjust it properly. Sending him to after school programs, he's going to stay in the classroom for a while. That's not it. We have to get these kids' attention. Now, you got to start with the younger generation, the younger, lower class levels, the elementary school level, start the discipline there. And then these kids will bring it to the junior high school level where discipline should exist there.
Well, and if you have a strong foundation and accountability with each grade, there'll be still a few kids that act out, but peer pressure is one of the strongest forces in school.
But when you have proper parental influence, peer pressure seems to go away. If you don't stand for something, that one thing, then you'll stand for everything.
Yeah.
Wayne said something very prescient a moment ago about there's a lot of anger in the kids. It's not a black thing. It's not a brown thing. It's not a white thing. There's a lot of anger. And in my 4 years of living this life, I no one wants to ask the question because it's going to be an awkward answer. How much of this anger is a function that little Johnny, little Susie, whatever color they happen to be, can't read? Okay. And so part of the multitude of reasons why FUSD is so bad is it's black and white data, no pun intended, that if you read at grade level, at the third grade level, when you get into the fourth grade level, okay, at the end of third, if you're at third grade level reading, when we promote you to fourth, you will do well in school. If you do not read at grade level at the end of third grade, you will not do well in school. So why don't we keep these kids that are reading at kindergarten level or first grade level at the end of third grade back a year, which is also a component of AB 104. But we don't. And therefore it just keeps going on and festering and festering and festering, and we have this anger.
We're down to about a minute. Website or way to contact, because you mentioned this is going to take money to change this school district.
It will be on your show notes.
Okay.
By whenever you get it posted, I'll send it to you this evening.
Okay. Final thoughts? We're down to about 40 seconds.
Final thoughts are, we can save our public school system. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of hard work, but it can be saved. We can bring it back to what it was when it was first founded.
Well, I sure hope so, because our future depends on it.
Yes.
It's a dumpster fire.
When I first heard that from a trustee from a different school district. First heard it described that way. That's telling.
And here we are.
Yeah, and here we are. Well, gentlemen, I thank you for sharing this time with me. I appreciate your dedication in trying to, well, basically preserve our future. That's a wrap.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this is Eric Rollins, the Constitutionalist, here on 1550 KXCX, the best talk in town, signing out, and we'll see you next week, folks. Thank you much.